Understanding the ideology of Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism functions as a complex synthesis of religious eschatology and geopolitical advocacy, positing that the state of Israel serves as a literal instrument for divine prophecy. By interpreting ancient biblical texts as a blueprint for contemporary history, this movement transforms theological conviction into concrete political action. As we examine this phenomenon today in March 2026, it remains a defining influence on international relations, particularly concerning the Middle East, bridging the gap between historical faith and modern statecraft. Foundational tenets and theological pillars. The movement is anchored in the belief that the physical return of the Jewish people to the Holy Land is an essential precursor to the second coming of Jesus Christ. This perspective often relies on a school of thought known as dispensationalism, which segments history into distinct eras governed by God's interactions with humanity. For these proponents, the modern state of Israel is not merely a political entity, but a sacred project operating under divine mandate, biblical prophecy fulfillment. Proponents treat verses found in the books of Ezekiel and Isaiah as predictive narratives for current geopolitical realities, viewing the existence of modern Israel as the visible manifestation of these ancient promises. Support as divine duty. By interpreting Genesis 12:3 as an eternal pact, adherents believe that providing unconditional political and financial backing to Israel serves as a mechanism to invite divine favor upon their own nations and individuals. Eschatological urgency. The focus on the end times creates a profound sense of urgency, where supporting Israeli territorial integrity is seen as vital for accelerating the timeline toward the final battle and the subsequent millennial reign. Historical evolution and political organization. While the roots of Christian Zionism can be traced back to 17th century Puritanism in England, it found a significant and more organized modern identity within 19th century American evangelicalism. Over the last century, this ideology has evolved from a niche theological interpretation into a sophisticated political force. In the United States, this movement has successfully institutionalized its support, creating robust networks that directly influence foreign policy decisions and diplomatic strategies in the Middle East. Academic and institutional roots. Early Puritan settlers in the New World frequently identified their own plight with that of the Israelites, establishing a recurring cultural narrative that persisted through centuries of American development. Growth of advocacy groups. Organizations such as the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem and Christians United for Israel serve as primary conduits for mobilizing millions of supporters, effectively translating faith-based sentiment into consistent voting patterns and legislative lobbying. Institutional influence. By positioning themselves as key stakeholders in the conversation regarding the Middle East, these groups ensure that theological priorities remain central to discussions surrounding national security and international aid to Israel, critiques, controversies, and ethical considerations. Despite its political influence, Christian Zionism faces significant criticism from diverse quarters, including human rights advocates and theological scholars who disagree with this specific interpretation of prophecy. A primary point of contention is that this ideology often prioritizes an apocalyptic timeline over the immediate human suffering of displaced populations in the region. Critics argue that when one views the Middle East through an exclusively prophetic lens, the complexities of the Palestinian experience can be disregarded or dismissed as secondary to a higher divine purpose. Ignoring human impact, observers argue that the intense focus on apocalyptic narratives leads to a fatalistic worldview, which can inadvertently hinder diplomatic attempts to reach a lasting peace, as any compromise is viewed as contrary to divine plan. The question of proselytization. Many traditional strands of this movement harbor the long-term expectation that Jewish people must eventually embrace Christianity to fulfill the requirements of the Second Coming, a belief that creates friction even among the groups they officially support. Funding of settler communities. A frequent point of debate involves the financial support provided by some Christian Zionist groups to Israeli settler communities in disputed territories, which many international observers consider to be a major obstacle to the realization of a two-state solution. Navigating the socio-political landscape. The intersection of religious belief and state identity represents one of the most volatile and significant dynamics in contemporary politics. For those attempting to navigate this space, it is crucial to recognize that Christian Zionism is not a monolith. It contains a wide spectrum of views, ranging from moderate expressions of support for Israeli democracy to radical interpretations of end times prophecy. However, the cumulative effect of these beliefs has resulted in a powerful lobby that consistently shapes the contours of Western engagement with the Middle East. As the political landscape continues to shift, The tensions inherent in this ideology remain central to the discourse on international justice. The movement's ability to frame political support as a spiritual obligation demonstrates the enduring power of religious conviction in modern secularized policy environments. Understanding these motivations is essential for anyone aiming to analyze the intricacies of modern global politics and the competing narratives that define the future of the Holy Land. Ultimately, Christian Zionism occupies a unique space where the fervor of religious belief meets the pragmatism of geopolitical strategy. By viewing the existence of Israel as a literal fulfillment of biblical prophecy, followers have cultivated a persistent and deeply entrenched movement. Whether analyzed through the lens of theological history or through the mechanics of modern lobbying, it remains clear that this ideology will continue to be a significant factor in shaping the future of international relations, representing an intersection where personal faith and global political trajectories are inextricably linked in the pursuit of a perceived divine destiny.